Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. I hope you had a lovely Christmas, or if it was a difficult one, then I hope 2022 brings you some more comfort and joy over the next 12 months. It's certainly been a difficult couple of years for all of us for one reason or another. For me, this past year has been difficult, not because of the virus, but because of sciatica and shoulder trouble and stuff, which thankfully has now eased back considerably. I don't have any issues with that now, so that's good. I've been able to get out and about a lot more over the past few months, so I've been to see the Rocky Horror Show live, for instance. I've been to an audio-described tour of London Zoo. I've got to see a new Shakespeare play, and I've got to interview one of the visually impaired actors in that play. And I was interviewed myself on the RNIB's radio station. So there's been various bits and pieces going on, and there's various things to mention this month too, of course. But December and this Christmas was also very significant because it also marks my 5th anniversary in London, which is amazing to think that that amount of time has gone. Yes, the past couple of years have been a bit of a write-off, to be fair, but that just makes it all the more amazing how much I've packed in terms of things like public speaking and media interviews and all the places I've visited and all the people I've met and everything I've done. There's the abseil as well, of course, and so many other things. So thank you to everyone who's played any part in that, whether I've met you in person, done things for you or with you, or you've just liked and commented on my posts and shared things or just read things, whatever. If you've got any kind of enjoyment out of, reading what I do, watching what I do, then thank you very much. It's all really spurred me on and given me a lot of confidence over the past few years. And I'm looking forward to further broadening my horizons over the years ahead to see what else I get up to and see who else I meet. So yeah, it's been definitely a wonderful reset of my life to move to London and to really change things up and to just do so much more with my time and my life and just meet so many wonderful new people. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future has in store. But before I see what 2022 has in store for me, I do of course have to wrap up 2021 and talk about what I got up to and enjoyed over December and Christmas. And there's a bumper post as usual. There's a great big blog post to go with this with a lot more detail than I can possibly cover in a video. So do go and read that if you want more links and detail about what I talk about here. There'll be loads of links in the description as well if you want to find out more about things. And yeah, there's just loads of different topics from outings I've had and theatre shows I've seen and audio books I've listened to, films I've watched and other comedies and entertainment and things that I've enjoyed. So there's loads to get through. So let's just crack on with it and I hope you enjoy it. So first of all, Mum and I have indulged ourselves on lots of nice festive food again this year as per usual. Marks and Spencer's is always a good go-to for us, and their online Christmas food to order service worked very well again this year. Not quite as extensive a range this year for understandable reasons, but there was still plenty to tempt us, and we got a lovely turkey from them and pigs in blankets and stuffing balls and a lovely big triple chocolate Yule log. And I went into Marks and Spencer in person during the month as well a few times and came out with various bits and pieces there too, like more turkey and a beef and gammon joint and various other bits and pieces and treats like mince pies and a Christmas cake and another Yule log. So we did very well there. There's always so much temptation when I walk in their shops. And then we also got lots of nice things from Sainsbury's as well, who we use for our grocery deliveries every week, and they've served us very well throughout the pandemic, it must be said. So we got easy carved turkey joints and a 3-bird roast, and we had their delicious Belgian chocolate roulade and some of their mince pies, of course, and I got a Tunis cake and various other bits and pieces, so we did very well there. And we also bought lots of sweets and treats to nibble on as well. So we got tubs of Cadbury's Roses and Celebrations and a shortbread selection box, and I got a box of Cadbury's Heroes from my colleagues in work in Devon that I won in the office tombola, and my aunt bought us a nice M&S hamper and a Thornton's chocolate selection box. We've had lots to nibble on. And then finally on one weekend I also treated myself to the festive pizza being offered by Domino's, which is topped with sage and onion turkey, sausage, smoked bacon, onions and mozzarella cheese, and that was really nice too. So then in terms of going out and about, my main outing during the month was a trip to the historic town of Rochester, loved by Charles Dickens, with fellow visually impaired blogger Emily Davison from Fashionista. We've known each other since I moved to London, so it was lovely to meet up with her again. And we had a lovely time looking around for the day. We started off in the cathedral. That's a lovely historic building in there. And we had a little poodle around the high street. So we went into Baggins Book Bazaar, which is a huge bookshop, very much like a TARDIS in there. You just keep walking and finding rooms and shelves full of books. It's amazing. And then we went to a place called Kiss Kiss Heart, which has lots of nice decorations and things in there, and the candy bar with all sorts of tasty treats in there. I came out with a few sweet treats, including a nice box of fudge and some coconut ice. And then we went on to a place called Peggotty's Parlour, where we had a lovely afternoon tea, and I was able to replace my tea with hot chocolate because I prefer that. But we had a nice selection of sandwiches and cakes and things. And then we went around the Guildhall Museum and had a little look in there too. That's really interesting. And then we just finished with a nice little walk, really. Had a little stroll alongside the river and around the outside of the castle. And then as it got dark, we were able to see the Christmas lights in the high street. So it was a very nice end to a very pleasant today. So if you want to find out more, there's a whole blog post full of photos and other details if you want to check that out. And then I also went out for various walks around London, of course, as I like to do, and I had a look at some of the Christmas lights, and Carnaby's were my favourite this year because they had lots of nice colourful butterflies up in the sky, and also saw the Regent Street and Oxford Street Christmas lights, of course, and just had some general walks alongside the Thames as well, went around Battersea Park and places like that. So got a nice bit of fresh air and tried to walk off at least some of the Christmas food that I've been eating. And then you may also have seen the video I posted of the Ebony Steel Band performing Christmas songs on Oxford Street like they do every year in aid of the NSPCC. It's always good to catch them when I can, so I hope you enjoyed that video too. Then in terms of theatre, the favourite show I went to this month was The Play That Goes Wrong by the crew of Mischief Theatre. This is their first and longest running of their various shows, but one of the last ones I've actually got around to seeing. And basically it features the fictional Cornley Polytechnic Drama Society trying and failing miserably to put on a murder mystery play because nothing goes to plan. Props are in the wrong place or don't work properly, or the set starts to fall apart, or actors just are unrehearsed, or they're over keen, or all sorts of different things like that. It's really well put together, really well choreographed. You know, it's proper fast, proper slapstick and everything, and there's great audio description from Vocalise as well. No touch tour, they had to cancel that this time because of obvious concerns with everything going on, but even so, the audio description was really useful, particularly for all the visual gags and little props and things that I might otherwise have missed, so thank you to Vocalise for doing that. And then the other production I saw this month wasn't audio described, but then I was in the front row of a small theatre venue anyway, the Leicester Square Theatre next to the Prince Charles Cinema, so I could see everything I needed to, and anything I missed wasn't critical because this was just a silly comedy production basically, and it was a spoof version of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens called A Pistmas Carol, and it was by a group called Shit-Faced Showtime, and it's as rude as the name suggests. Basically, they get the lead actor playing Scrooge drunk before the show and keep him topped up during the show if the audience notice that he's sobering up and remembering his lines again and things. And yeah, it's just very rude and very unpredictable, and all the other actors, although they know their lines in the basic story, they will adapt as necessary depending on what nonsense Scrooge is coming out with. And you can tell it's going to be a rude show from the start because he starts saying hello to people using the Yippee-ki-yay line from Die Hard, so that gives you an idea of the tone that's being set. But it's really funny, it's really silly, and there are also some nice little songs in there as well, like some fun adaptations of Christmas songs and things, and one guy in the front row was even roped into singing a bit of Staying Alive and things, just 2 seats away from me. Luckily they didn't pick me. So yeah, it was just a good fun night out, and it's a nice little venue just off Leicester Square. I'm going to be going to see Chris McCausland and Maisie Adam there as well during 2022, so I'm looking forward to going back there. It's a nice little place. So then moving on to audiobooks next, and Mum and I have finished listening to Richard Osman's latest murder mystery, The Man Who Died Twice, which is the sequel to his first book, The Thursday Murder Club, which we've also listened to again as well because we wanted to enjoy that again and refresh our memories. And they're both very well written. They're about the residents of the Cooper's Chase retirement village who get together to solve murders and the crimes associated with them and things. And that means there's plenty of mystery and intrigue and drama and bits of gentle humour in there as well. And you get to know each of the different characters. You hear the story from different people's perspectives, including Joyce's diary, of course. And I am now following her on Instagram at the account that she's created in the second book, and I think Richard's writing has improved this time. Now, it was already very good the first time round, but he's really settled into his style this time, I think, and Leslie Manville has settled into the audio narration better this time as well. I think she reads it better this time, and the two of them have a nice chat at the end of the second book. It's really interesting to hear about Richard's writing and thought process, as well as how Leslie's got into recording audiobooks, because it's not something she's experienced with, but she is very good at it. And we already know that there'll be a third book out in September, which Leslie has also promised to read and have a chat with Richard at the end of it, and he already has a fourth and fifth book in mind beyond that as well. And Steven Spielberg's production company has got the rights to make a film of at least the first book, and if that's successful they'll do more. So there's lots more to look forward to from the Thursday Murder Club, which will be interesting. And Mum and I also listened to Richard Osman's episode of Desert Island Discs that was on over Christmas as well, and he was really open about his life and gave lots of interesting insights there, including his nystagmus that he has and the departure of his father when he was very young, and his food addiction. He was very open about that, and his roles behind and in front of the TV cameras, and his current series of mystery novels and things like that. So it was really interesting to listen to that, and his musical choices were quite a variety as well, quite a surprising variety, and kind of evenly split between things I knew and liked and things that I didn't really know and wasn't that bothered about. So yeah, it was quite interesting to listen to that. We enjoyed that. And then while we were having dinner each day during Christmas week, Mum and I listened to a reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens on BBC Sounds. Although we do know the basic story, and we've seen things on the TV and we've seen it in the theatre, and I've seen the parody version recently and so on and so forth, we've never actually read the original story, so it was nice to finally get around to listening to it. And it is a lovely story, and it's really well written. It's nice and easy to understand. It's not like Shakespeare where the language can be quite difficult to decode. This is actually nice and easy to follow, so really enjoyed listening to that. And you can buy it on Audible as part of a classic suspense collection if you want. We're not going to bother with that, but you can buy it on Audible if you wish to. And then I personally also listened to a book that my friend Claire very kindly gifted me on Audible called The Second Sleep by Robert Harris, and this is quite an interesting concept really. It's about a priest who was sent to do a funeral on Exmoor but gets drawn into this much deeper and more intriguing mystery, because it turns out that it's set in the future even though it feels medieval, because our current civilization has been destroyed by some kind of apocalypse. And so the human race is basically rebuilding itself and living a very primitive existence relative to ours. And they're struggling to find out how we lived, because all our digital assets have been destroyed, because everything's on computer these days, of course. So everything's gone. And, a lot of our architecture is very disposable, and it's just collapsed and just disappeared. And the only thing that's really left are big things like churches and things like that were really built to last and survive the centuries. So, the church, who are now ruling the land in this future time, have declared that trying to research and restore anything from the past is heresy, and you can get in severe trouble for trying to look into it. But obviously people do, and it's interesting to see them trying to figure out what we did and the things they discover along the way. So it's quite an interesting concept. It's kind of wrapped up quite abruptly at the end, and there was certainly more scope to explore it further, but it does really get you thinking, and it's a very sobering look at the way we live today and just how fragile things are today, really. Even though we think we have everything, it could all just disappear and be destroyed, and very few records left if we're not very careful. So yeah, it's a very thought-provoking book that I can recommend giving it a listen. It's quite interesting. So then moving on to movies next, and this month I bought Daniel Craig's final Bond film, No Time to Die, on Blu-ray. I hadn't seen it in the cinema before, so I enjoyed watching it for the first time. It's nothing exceptional in terms of Bond films or action movies in general, and it's perhaps a little bit too long really, but it's still good entertainment, as these films always are. There's an interesting story about this infectious microscopic killer, which is a bit topical today in some ways, and there's some great action sequences as usual, and beautiful locations and everything. Rami Malek, who played Freddie Mercury in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, is great here as the villain, and I've been watching Mock the Week a lot on TV recently, and they've been talking about Hugh Dennis's cameo, and so I'm glad to have finally seen that, to know what they're talking about. And then there's the title song by Billie Eilish, which I'm not really a fan of, to be honest. It does fit with the tone of the movie, so in context it does kind of make sense, but I'm still not a big fan of it really, so I won't be listening to it separately from the film. But yeah, overall the film is pretty good. And as for the ending of the film, I knew what happened, of course, because it was everywhere after the film came out. It was impossible to avoid it, but I didn't know how or why it happened, so it wasn't spoiled in that sense, luckily. And Daniel Craig played it well, I think. And he's had a good run at Bond in general. Not the best, perhaps. When you've got Sean Connery and Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan and people like that, it's hard to kind of beat them. But he still did a pretty good job, and it'd be interesting to see who they pick next. And the Blu-ray also had audio description, which was fantastic, just as they've supplied for the previous 4 films. And the second disc in this collector's edition had about just over half an hour of bonus features about the action sequences, locations, and the overall design of the film. It's not really much to put on a second disc. It feels a bit of a waste, but it's better than nothing. They were still interesting to watch those extra bits. And then over on Amazon, I decided to check out Spiral, the latest movie in the Saw horror franchise, because I bought the Legacy Collection box set of the first 8 films back in May. And this new film is about a copycat killer who kind of stars himself upon the style of Jigsaw, and stars Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, among other people. And it's nowhere near as good as the original films, basically. It's kind of okay to watch once, but the traps kind of aren't very interesting, and there's no real chance of escaping from them, to be honest. And the story isn't particularly special or interesting, but it was still nice enough to kill an hour and a half. But it's not something I'm going to buy or watch again particularly. And then also on Amazon this month, moving to a completely different genre of film, I watched the blockbuster musical The Greatest Showman for the first time, which my friend Simon had highly recommended to me some time back, and I knew it was very popular anyway. And it's based on the story of a businessman called P.T. Barnum, played by Hugh Jackman, who basically ends up setting up this circus full of weird and wonderful performers, so people with certain unusual afflictions or certain special talents and things. And there are people who don't approve of this, because they think people have been exploited and everything. They don't like to see unusual things like that. And he kind of neglects the performers himself as he kind of pursues even further success and further interest in things. But a tragedy then forces him to kind of reevaluate his priorities and rebuild the show and everything. And it's pretty good fun, to give it its dues. I wouldn't buy it necessarily to rewatch it lots of times, but it was a very entertaining way to spend an evening. The story moves along nicely, it doesn't get boring, the characters are interesting and everything, and I can kind of empathise with those who feel that their conditions mean they have to hide away from society or they're a bit shy or stuff like that. But most importantly, of course, there are just great musical numbers in there. They're very well performed with great choreography and visuals and everything. And my favourite number is A Million Dreams, in large part because I was already a big fan of it and had fallen in love with it before seeing the film, without knowing any of the context as to why that song is used, because Kerry Ellis had covered it on her album Feels Like Home that I bought last year. So I already loved that song, and it was great to see it in its rightful place in the film. But there are lots of other great songs in there as well. And then also on a musical theme, I saw 2018's A Star Is Born on the BBC over Christmas, which had been recommended to me by my friend Tina. And I've never seen the previous versions of this story that have been filmed in the past, and I'm not particularly interested in doing so either, so I have nothing to compare it to. But this version stars Bradley Cooper, who was also making his his directorial debut here as well, starring as Jackson Maine, who is a heavy-drinking, drug-taking country rock star, and he falls in love with this singer Ali, who he discovers, and she's played by Lady Gaga. And she's making her acting debut here, and she does a pretty good job, to be fair to her. And Ali goes on tour with Jackson's band, but then goes on to have this huge success of her own when she's discovered by a record producer, while Jackson's fortunes go downhill and come to a very tragic end, which leaves Ali distraught because they got very close and everything. So it's not a story with a happy ending, but it's certainly a very interesting one, and there's some lovely songs in there like Shallow and I'll Never Love Again. So it's a nice film. Again, not one that I would buy by any means, but it was interesting to watch it, definitely. And then finally on the film front, I saw the Harry Potter 20th anniversary reunion show over on Sky, and it was lovely to see lots of the surviving cast members and directors and other people who worked on the films getting back together again and reminiscing. It's clear everyone has a great fondness for the films and each other as well, so it was great to see them all getting back together. No major new insights necessarily, a few little things here and there maybe, but it wasn't about revealing anything new particularly. It was just about celebrating the films and kind of reliving them a bit, so it was a nice way to spend a couple of hours. The author J.K. Rowling was of course conspicuous by her absence. She only appeared in a few brief archive interview clips, but then given the controversy and offence she's caused by recent comments about trans people, it's not really surprising. She denies that's the reason she wasn't there, but we can all safely assume, I think, that that was one of the reasons that she wasn't included, because it would have caused a bit of controversy in some quarters, I think. And there was also a lovely section in the show paying tribute to the cast and crew members who had passed away. There's a lot of people who worked on the films who are no longer with us, sadly, so it was great that they were remembered in that little section of the show. One of the saddest and most intriguing losses for me is Rick Mayall, who I love from Bottom and Young Ones and various other shows, because he played Peeves the Poltergeist in the first film, The Philosopher's Stone, but a lot of people don't know that because he was completely cut. He filmed the scenes and he thought he was going to be in it, but then was told that he wasn't, and the deleted scenes have never appeared on DVD or anything like that. They've never been seen publicly. Chris Columbus, who directed the first film, has said he would love his original 3-hour edit to be released, which would include those scenes, so there is hope that maybe one day we will get to see Rick Mayall's scenes in The Philosopher's Stone. It would be absolutely fantastic, because by all accounts he was really funny on set. He made it really difficult to film because all the kids were laughing at his antics so much, so I really hope we do get to see that one day, because it would be great to see another bit of Rick's genius. So then moving on to TV, and the BBC celebrated the 40th anniversary of Only Fools and Horses by releasing a brand new Blu-ray box set of the show's 5 specials from the 1980s, and this is when it became tradition to watch a feature-length edition of Fools and Horses at Christmas time. And these episodes are To Hull and Back, A Royal Flush, The Frog's Legacy, Dates, and The Jolly Boys Outing, and those 2 last episodes in particular are 2 of my very favourites. But they're all quite good episodes. I think A Royal Flush is the weakest one in the set, and the significance of this set isn't just the fact that the episodes have been remastered and look better than ever, but they're also uncut, and that particularly applies to Jolly Boys Outing, where they've restored a scene in the nightclub where they have singer Lee Gibson performing Just the Way You Are, which meant it got cut from DVD releases for music rights. That's now fully restored, and all the other episodes are uncut as well. The other significant thing in that regard is A Royal Flush, because that never went down very well to begin with, because the kind of filming was rushed and everything, and Del Boy came across as a bit too harsh, a bit too mean really. So John Sullivan re-edited the episode for the 2004 DVD release, and that edit is better. It tightens things up, and Del isn't quite so horrible and everything, but on this release they've included the original version and the edit, so you can see both versions, so it's really interesting to see the differences between the two. And then as well as the episodes, you also get an impressively extensive photo gallery for each episode on the discs as well, with promotional shots of the cast and images taken during filming, photos of the sets and locations, and various other things from behind the scenes. So there's a huge selection that are well worth looking through. There's some nice surprises in there, and they're accompanied by music from the opening and closing titles, which are played a little bit faster than the TV show, and they're actually slightly extended, so you get to hear the fade out for a tiny bit longer. Also, if the gallery is long enough, they also sandwich in the middle the music that was used when the Trotters walked off into the sunset when they became millionaires, which has nothing to do with the episodes in this set because that's from the 90s, but nevertheless you get to hear a clean version of that music, which is quite nice to hear. And then also on the first disc you get another gallery of the photo shoots used for the opening titles. You get various different shots of London that were used, and also lots of different shots of the cast members that were used when their cards appear on the screen. So there's a lot of nice stuff in there as well. And on top of all that, there's also a bit of silent footage included from the filming of A Jolly Boys Outing, where you get to see the guys on the roller coaster and a few other little bits and pieces. Nothing too exciting, but it's nice to see anyway. So yeah, it's a nice set. It's the best treatment Fools and Horses has had for a considerable time, and hopefully if this box set sells well, the BBC will consider releasing more of Fools and Horses on Blu-ray, remastered with extras and everything. So I'm glad they've released that. And then on a related note, I also enjoyed listening online to a BBC Radio Bristol show about the 40th anniversary of Only Fools. And it makes sense that Radio Bristol were doing this because as the sitcom grew in popularity, it became increasingly difficult to film in London because crowds of people kept flocking to the filming locations whenever they knew they were there. So going to Bristol gave them a bit of peace and quiet, a bit of space. So a lot of the show was filmed there, and Bristol represented London basically. So Andy Bennett presented this fun hour-long programme, which followed on from a 4-hour programme he did back for the anniversary in September. And here he played various songs that were used in the series, like Our House and 2468 Motorway and Crying, etc. And interviewed a few people who had worked on the show and talked to a resident of Whitemead House that stood in for Nelson Mandela House in the show. And he also chatted to Tessa Pete Jones, who played Raquel, and significantly he talked to John Challis as well. And this is an interview that he'd recorded just a few weeks before he died. It's believed to be the last BBC interview that John Challis did. So it was really kind of poignant and interesting to hear all of that. So that was a good show. And then apart from Only Fools, I did of course watch some other Christmas specials of classic sitcoms that I like as well, but I see them every year, so I'm not going to mention them here. But in terms of new stuff, which you can find more detail about in the blog post if you wish, I bought Series 2 of The Goes Wrong Show on DVD, which is that brilliant farcical series by Mischief Theatre. I saw the Christmas special of Not Going Out, which was a bit of a strange one, where Lee was dreaming that he's trapped in a Cinderella pantomime with Jason Donovan, but it was still fun. Just a shame that Bobby Ball obviously couldn't be in it, but they paid a nice tribute to him in the episode. I saw The Cockfields as well, with Simon and his fiancée Esther visiting his parents for Christmas. Nothing really special about that episode really, and the series is feeling a bit repetitive now, so I might kind of duck out of it if they do another series. I'll probably check it out if they do one, but unless it kind of evolves, I can't see myself really sticking with it much longer. And again, it doesn't feel quite right not having Bobby Ball there either. The guy who replaced him isn't quite as good, I don't think. Wurzel Gummidge was back as well, following on from their Bonfire Night episode. They did a couple more, one about a large group of Twitchers invading the farm to see some rare chuffs, and the other involving a travelling fair coming to the area with Bill Bailey as the fair owner. So that was quite fun, both of those episodes. And then in terms of Staged, which is the lockdown sitcom that David Tennant and Michael Sheen have already done 2 series of, they haven't done a new episode for Christmas, but they and the other main cast members did do a special New Year sketch online on the BritBox channel, which is quite fun, and they hint at a 3rd series there, as well as slipping in a reference to the upcoming 2nd series of Good Omens as well that Tennant and Sheen have also been working on. So looking forward to seeing more material from them. And then moving away from sitcoms, I saw the Christmas special of QI, and this was significant for me because I was in the audience for it. It was recorded virtually back in March, and I'd applied for free tickets through the Applause store, so it was great to see the edited version of it. You know, they cut a lot of good stuff out, of course, but a lot of the best stuff was, of course, left in. The guests were Bonnie Langford and Joe Lycett and Sally Phillips, a great combination, along with Alan Davis, of course. And the actual recording lasted about 2.5 hours, and there weren't many pauses, to be honest. A few little pauses here and there to take away props and bring in new ones, and a few little retakes for Sandy, but to be honest, it all flowed really well. And I'm not surprised that they do QIXL extended episodes, which thankfully are now starting for Series S. It's taken the BBC a while, but they're now starting in January, which is fantastic. I was waiting for those. But yeah, there was a lot of great facts in there, a lot of great banter and everything, so it's great to see a lot of that in the final edit. When we were actually in the audience itself, we were told to kind of laugh loudly as if we were in a studio, because you don't do that at home normally. You know, you might laugh out loud here and there, but you don't laugh loudly like you would in a theatre, because it's not a communal experience when you're at home, unless you're in a big family perhaps. So it's quite strange to do that to begin with, but you soon get used to doing it, as weird as it feels initially. And they also got us in the mood with like music and a quiz and everything before the show actually started, so they were quite good at kind of getting you in the mood really. But yeah, it was really interesting to be in the audience for that, and I hope that one day I can be in the QA audience in person. And then in terms of other game shows, I enjoyed the New Year's Day special of Taskmaster, which featured Paralympian Johnny Peacock along with other people. That was good fun, and we've obviously got the next Champion of Champions special to look forward to, as well as Series 13 later in the year. I saw the Christmas special of Nevermind the Buzzcocks, also presented by Greg Davis, of course, and that was good fun. That had Holly Johnson from Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and he performed The Power of Love at the end of that show. And I saw the Christmas special of 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, which didn't feature Sean Locke, but didn't mention him either because it was filmed in July before he died. But it still featured good guests anyway. Jason Manford, Lee Mack, Sarah Millican and John Richardson, and Joe Wilkinson made an appearance as well. I wasn't bothered about Mr. Swallow in Dictionary Corner, but I'm not often enamoured by the guest in Dictionary Corner anyway. And at the end of the credits, they did pay tribute to Sean Locke then, but they may well make more mention of him and tribute to him in later episodes because a new series has started in January. So depending on when they film that, they may well do a bit more in his honour there. And I also enjoyed the festive editions of Will I Lie to You, which is also back in January, and What the Week, I've Got News for You, Big Fat Quiz of the Year, and Dave are still showing new episodes of Who Lines It Anyway, even coming into January from America, hosted by Aisha Tyler, so I'm still enjoying watching those. And I'm sorry I haven't a clue on the radio. Mum and I have enjoyed listening to that. In terms of stand-up comedy on Netflix, I enjoyed the new specials by Jimmy Carr called His Dark Material and Russell Howard called Lubricant. They're both very funny, and if you know those comedians, you know what to expect. Jimmy Carr's humour is particularly dark and rude, of course, but it's still very funny, still pretty clever. And Russell Howard is questioning the state of the world and emphasises the importance of laughter as a universal language and a shared experience. And both of them also make references to COVID and anti-vaxxers and Black Lives Matter and things, with one or two slightly similar jokes here and there, as is perhaps inevitable. And also Russell Howard has a bonus documentary with his stand-up special too, where he takes a very interesting look at how he became a comedian and shows his relationship with his family and shows how the pandemic impacted him and his career. So that's really interesting to watch as well. And then on TV, I enjoyed the Christmas special of Live at the Apollo, hosted by Jason Manford. He was very good, as was Maisie Adam, making her debut appearance on the show, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her live in person in 2022. I wasn't too bothered about the other comedian they had on the show, but then you can't like everyone they have on that series, so that didn't matter. And then I also saw the Christmas Comedy Club with Lost Voice Guy on ITV with Bill Bailey and Rosie Jones among the guests. Apollo was better, but that was still a fun show nonetheless. And of course, we can't mention stand-up comedy without paying respect to Jethro, who passed away aged 73. I never felt inclined to buy any of his videos or DVDs. I was never that big a fan of his, but I did enjoy some of his TV appearances and some of the online clips I've seen of him over the years. And he was from the West Country like me, and he was very widely respected, among the whole comedy scene, really, among many people. So I do have a lot of respect for him, and it is a shame that he's gone. It's always a shame when these big comedians pass away. So farewell, Jethro. And then finally, to wrap up some other shows I saw, naturally I watched Doctor Who, Eve of the Daleks, the latest New Year special, and that featured Irish comedian Aisling Bea as a guest star. And it basically featured them all stuck in a never-decreasing time loop or being attacked by Daleks all the time. So that was quite an interesting concept. And there are just 2 more specials left for Jodie Whittaker now, coming up later this year, the final one celebrating the BBC's 100th anniversary, so they should be fun too. And then I also enjoyed the Last Legs Christmas and New Year specials, as always, of course, but I also enjoyed its co-hosts, Alex Brooker and Josh Widdicombe, in their series called One Night In, where they and some of their fellow comedian friends got to explore some of England's biggest tourist attractions after the public had gone home at night. So it's basically just a bunch of mates getting together and having a laugh and doing some silly challenges, and it's really good fun. As someone who has visited the Natural History Museum and London Zoo, including a recent tour of London Zoo I particularly enjoyed those episodes. They got to have a game of hide and seek in the museum and got to poke around a normally off-limits area with fish stored in jars and stuff. And in the zoo, they got to feed the camels and play with the pygmy goats and make friends with the penguins and see lions and giraffes and spiders and so on. And then their visit to Walton Towers was also fun, and there's one more episode about Legoland to come as well. And this series is actually a follow-up to last year's special called One Night in Hamleys that starred a different set of comedians looking around the world-famous toy store in London. I still prefer Alex and Josh's adventures overall, I think, but it's still nice to watch that original special on catch-up as well. And then the BBC aired a Lost Morecambe and Wise episode that Eric Morecambe's son Gary had found in 2020, and this dates back to 1970. A few clips have been shown in an ITV documentary earlier in 2021, but BBC showed the fully restored version, so I've recorded that. We haven't watched it yet because my mother and I are about to go through the DVD box sets I've bought of the Morecambe and Wise shows on ITV and BBC. So we'll slot that into the BBC series when we watch it because it's Series 4, Episode 6. I also saw the Royal Variety performance as well, which was hosted quite nicely by Alan Carr from the Royal Albert Hall. I recorded it so I could skip, acts I didn't like as well as the adverts, but I did enjoy some bits and pieces, including the cast of Moulin Rouge and Matilda the Musical and Cirque du Soleil, and there were performances from Elvis Costello and Rod Stewart, and I enjoyed the comedians Chris McCausland, Josh Widdicombe and Bill Bailey, so there's quite a lot in there to enjoy. And then on a different royal note, I saw the Royal Institution Christmas Lectures, which I don't see every year as often the subjects and hosts don't interest me, but this was particularly relevant as it was about viruses and pandemics and vaccines and things, and it was presented by Sir Jonathan Van Tam, who has just recently been knighted, and people will know him as the Deputy Chief Medical Officer who often appears in press conferences and interviews and has been very good at giving reassurance and clear information to do with the pandemic. But here he wasn't a government spokesperson, he was literally just speaking in his own capacity as a scientist, and he had various other guest professors coming in to do demonstrations, often with audience members, to kind of really explain things simply and clearly so that lay people can understand how viruses work, how pandemics work, how we can defeat them, how vaccines work, all that kind of thing. So although I did know quite a bit of it, it was still really interesting and I still learned a fair amount from it. So if you have any questions about the pandemic, if any of this is still confusing you, it's well worth looking that up on Catch Up because that was quite interesting. It was very well put together. And then on Netflix I saw Death to 2021, which is the sequel to last year's Death to 2020, and it's basically a dark spoof comic retrospective of the year. It features some real news footage but also lots of spoof interviews as well, and people like Hugh Grant, Tracy Ullman, Diane Morgan, Lawrence Fishburne and so on take part. It's very rude and very funny and also highlights how scarily crazy the world is at the moment really, so it's the antidote we need to it in a way. It talks mainly about America for a lot of it, but other countries like the UK and Afghanistan also feature quite prominently. So yeah, that's well worth a look as well if you like dark comedy. And then finally on the music front, there's only one thing to mention this month really, and that's that YouTubers Mark and Roxanne Hoyle, known as Lad Baby, have got to Christmas #1 yet again with a song about sausage rolls, which will be irritating to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, the songs are harmless, they're quite catchy and they're fun, and they're better than X Factor people getting to the top of the charts, and they are raising vital awareness and funds for food bank charity the Trussell Trust, who shouldn't exist in the first place. Food banks should not exist, and the government have a lot to answer for that, as does society in general really. But while they do exist, it's great that they are using their reach to millions of followers that they have to raise awareness that the Trussell Trust just would not have otherwise. So this year's single is called Sausage Rolls for Everyone and features Ed Sheeran and Elton John, who had given Lad Baby permission to adapt their own Christmas song from this year called Merry Christmas, which was also a charity song, raising money for Ed's Music Foundation and Elton's AIDS Foundation. So they got to #2 with their song in the chart this year because they released theirs early to give Lad Baby a chance. So they're very generous to get involved with that. But Lad Baby did also make another second version of their song with the Food Bank Choir as well. So there were 2 versions of their song on sale too. So yeah, they really did put a lot of work into it again this year, as they seem to have done over the past few years. So fair play to them, and let's see if they go for the big 5 in a row next year, because they've broken a record this year of having the most consecutive #1s in a row, but they've still got to beat the Beatles for the most Christmas #1s ever. And if they can do that again next year, then they'll achieve that. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they go for it. So yeah, good luck to them. They've done well this year. And that's it. Congratulations and thank you for making it through all of that. I hope you found that interesting and enjoyable in some ways. And who knows what 2022 has in store. I know some of it. I've got some things booked, including the We Will Rock You musical and a classical Queen concert at the Albert Hall when I'm seeing stand-up comedians Dara O'Brien, Sarah Millican, Maisie Adam and Chris McCausland. And in my blog, I'll be continuing with my favourites posts, and my old journal posts should be able to finish them this year, I think, and my detailed reviews of Queen's albums as well. But beyond all of that stuff, I don't know what else I'll be doing in 2022 yet. I don't know what it has lined up for me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens every year. Tends to throw up surprises of one sort or another. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen over the coming months. And I hope that 2022 is a wonderful year for you as well, in whatever way would make things better for you than the previous couple of years have been. So hopefully it will be a better one for all of us. But do continue to stay safe and be careful while we're getting through this. We are getting there. We will get there. But it's just going to take a little bit of time yet. But yeah, we are going to make it through it. We are already getting there. So yeah, I hope the 2022 is wonderful for you. Thank you very much for following my journey to date, whether it's over the past year, the past 5 years, or whatever it may be. It's very much appreciated that you pay me any attention and enjoy what I do and take an interest in what I do. So it is genuinely very much appreciated. Even if you're not saying anything to me, just the fact that you are watching this is still greatly appreciated, because the fact that I'm getting views just inspires me to carry on doing this stuff, knowing that people are watching. So yeah, thank you very much in whatever part, big or small, you've played in my life since I moved to London over the past few years. And I hope you'll continue sticking with me. But yeah, that's it for this bumper video. So thank you very much again for watching that. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel, and follow me on my blog and on my social media pages as well, so you can keep right up to date with everything I'm getting up to and posting about. And yeah, that is it. Stay safe and have fun. And I will see you for another video very soon. Bye for now. If you raise enough awareness and get the message out there, and alert businesses to the fact that there's a huge consumer market among the disabled community. We've got a £274 billion expenditure a year that we can give to them. But yeah, I just want to enjoy life as much as I can, and I just encourage everyone else to do the same. Don't be afraid to try things out. We all have our skills and talents, even if we don't quite know what they are. I didn't know it would be blogging or printing or anything like that. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to take the opportunities that come up. Hello. This is Glenn Cam here. Emily's still here though. I'm just taking under control. She's just busy taking pictures. There's a lovely deer back there.